The evening started like every other one in Rose's father's house, quiet, tense, and heavy with unspoken expectations. But that night, everything changed. Rose stood in the middle of the living room, her hands trembling slightly. She could feel her heart beating fast in her chest. Her father stood in front of her, his face tight with anger. He had just found out. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice low but dangerous. Rose swallowed hard. Her throat felt dry. "Yes, Papa," she said softly. For a moment, there was silence. Then it exploded. "You are pregnant," he shouted, his voice shaking the room. "In this house? Under my roof?" Rose flinched at the sound of his voice. She had expected anger, but not this level of rage. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said quickly, her voice breaking. "I was scared to tell you." "Shut up," he yelled, slamming his hand against the table. The loud sound made Rose jump. Her stepmother, who had been standing quietly by the wall, stepped forward with a cold smile. "I always knew this girl would bring shame," she said, folding her arms. "Look at her now. Pregnant without a husband. Disgraceful." Rose felt the words hit her like a slap. "I'm still your daughter," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "Please, just listen to me." But her father's face only grew harder. "My daughter," he repeated bitterly. "A daughter does not destroy her family's name like this." Rose shook her head slowly, tears now falling freely. "I have nowhere to go, Papa," she whispered. "Please, I'm begging you." But instead of softening, he pointed sharply at the door. "Leave this house," he said coldly. The words hung in the air. Rose stared at him, unable to move. "Papa, please." "I said get out," he shouted again. Her stepmother smirked slightly, watching everything. Rose's chest tightened. She looked at her father one last time, hoping, just hoping, he would change his mind. But he didn't even look at her again. He turned away. That was when Rose knew it was over. Slowly, she picked up her small bag. It wasn't much, just a few clothes and personal things. Everything she had left. Her legs felt heavy as she walked toward the door. Each step felt like she was leaving behind a part of herself. When she opened the door, the sound of heavy rain filled her ears immediately. She stepped outside. Cold rain poured down on her, soaking her clothes within seconds. Behind her, the door slammed shut. Rose stood there for a moment frozen. Her hand slowly moved to her stomach. Her baby, the only thing she had left. "I'll be okay," she whispered softly, though her voice trembled. Then she started walking. The street was almost empty. The rain made it hard to see clearly. Cars passed by quickly, splashing water as they went, but no one stopped. No one cared. Rose kept walking without direction. Her feet were getting tired. Her body felt weak. Her mind was full of fear and pain. After a while, she stopped under a dim streetlight. Her breathing became uneven. "I don't know where to go," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her knees began to give way. She felt like she was about to collapse. Then suddenly, bright headlights cut through the rain. A black luxury car stopped right in front of her. The engine went quiet. The door opened slowly. A man stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a black suit that looked expensive even in the rain. The water fell on him, but he didn't seem bothered at all. His presence was calm, controlled but powerful. Rose looked at him, confused and afraid. He walked closer to her, his eyes sharp and observant. "Get in," he said. His voice was deep and steady. Not loud, not harsh, but firm. Rose hesitated. I don't know you," she said weakly. The man stopped a few steps away from her. "I know enough," he replied calmly. His eyes moved briefly to her stomach, then back to her face. "You can't stay out here," he added. "You'll get sick." Rose's heart raced. Everything about him felt dangerous, but at the same time, something about him felt safe. She didn't understand it. "What's your name?" she asked quietly. "Oscar," he answered. Just one word. Simple. But it carried weight. Rose looked around. The empty street. The cold rain. The darkness. Then she looked back at him. She didn't have a choice. Oscar extended his hand toward her. "Last chance," he said calmly. Rose took a deep breath. Her fingers trembled slightly as she slowly reached out. Then, she placed her hand in his. And in that moment, everything changed. Because that decision would change Rose's life forever. Rose's hand was still trembling when Oscar gently guided her into the car. The moment she sat down, the door closed softly behind her, shutting out the heavy rain and cold night. The inside of the car was quiet, too quiet. It smelled clean, expensive, nothing like the world she had just left behind. She sat stiffly, her wet clothes clinging to her skin, her hands resting protectively over her stomach. Oscar got in on the other side. He didn't look at her immediately. He simply nodded once to the driver. Drive. The car moved smoothly, almost silently, into the night. Rose stared ahead, her heart still racing. She didn't know where they were going. She didn't know who this man truly was. All she knew was that she had just entered a stranger's car with no plan, no backup, and no way back. She stole a quick glance at him. Oscar sat beside her, calm and composed. His posture was straight, his expression unreadable. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look curious. He looked like a man who was always in control. "Why are you helping me?" Rose asked quietly. Her voice sounded small in the large, silent space. Oscar turned his head slightly, his eyes resting on her for a brief moment. "You needed help," he said simply. Nothing more. No explanation. Rose frowned slightly. That answer didn't feel complete, but she didn't push further. The rest of the ride was quiet. After some time, the car slowed down. Rose looked out the window, and her eyes widened. They had arrived at a massive gate. Tall, black, and heavily guarded. The gate opened automatically, and the car drove inside. What she saw next didn't feel real. A huge mansion stood ahead, glowing under bright lights. The compound was clean, perfectly arranged, with expensive cars parked neatly to the side. Security men stood at different points, watching everything carefully. Rose's breath caught. "Where are we?" she whispered. Oscar didn't answer. The car stopped. A man quickly stepped forward and opened the door for her. "Welcome," he said politely. Rose hesitated before stepping out. Her feet touched the ground slowly, like she wasn't sure it was real. Inside the house was even more overwhelming. Everything was beautiful. Marble floors, soft lighting, expensive furniture. It felt like stepping into another world, a world she had never imagined being part of. Rose hugged herself slightly, feeling out of place. Oscar walked in behind her. "Get her something dry to wear," he said calmly. "Yes, sir." A woman replied immediately. Rose noticed how quickly they responded to him. No hesitation. No questions. Just respect. The woman approached Rose gently. "This way, please." Rose looked at Oscar for a moment. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded once. That was all. No smile. No emotion. Just acknowledgement. Rose followed the woman upstairs. She was given clean clothes, warm towels, and a quiet room. Everything felt too perfect, too easy. After she changed, she sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing. "Why would a man like that help me?" she whispered to herself. Later, she stepped out into the hallway, unsure of where to go. That's when she heard voices. Two staff members were talking quietly near the stairs. "Who is she?" one asked. "I don't know," the other replied. "But if he brought her here, she must be important." Rose stayed still, listening. Then one of them lowered their voice slightly. "Do you even know who that man is?" There was a short silence. "No, but I can tell he's not ordinary." The first one gave a small, nervous laugh. "That's Oscar. People don't just say his name carelessly." Rose's heart skipped. She slowly stepped back, her thoughts spinning. Who exactly had she just trusted? And what kind of man had she just entered the world of? Rose did not sleep well that night. Even though the bed was soft and the room was warm, her mind refused to rest. Everything that had happened felt too fast, too strange. One moment she was standing in the rain with nowhere to go, and the next, she was inside a mansion that didn't even feel real. The next morning, she woke up slowly. For a few seconds, she forgot where she was. Then it all came back. Her father, the rain, The car. Oscar. Rose sat up gently, placing her hand on her stomach. The baby inside her was now her only reason to stay strong. I have to be careful, she whispered to herself. Later that morning, she stepped out of the room. A staff member greeted her politely and led her downstairs for breakfast. Everything was quiet, organized, controlled. Rose noticed it immediately. This house didn't feel like a normal home. It felt like a place where rules mattered. As she sat at the table, her eyes moved around carefully. Guards stood at a distance. Staff moved quickly but respectfully. Then Oscar walked in. The entire atmosphere shifted. Everyone became more alert, more focused. Rose noticed it clearly. No one spoke unless spoken to. No one made unnecessary movements. He walked past them calmly, like he was used to this level of control. That was when it became real to her. This man was not just rich. He was powerful. Later that day, Rose overheard more whispers from the staff. He's not just anyone, one of them said quietly. People fear him. Another replied, and respect him. Rose's chest tightened. A feared and respected man. A mafia boss. She didn't need anyone to explain further. She understood. That evening, she sat alone in her room, thinking deeply. Maybe I should leave, she said softly. Her heart told her to be careful. This kind of life, this kind of man, it was dangerous. But then reality hit her. Where would she go? She had no money, no home, no support, and she was pregnant. Her eyes filled with tears. I can't go anywhere, she admitted quietly. Just then, there was a knock on the door.
Come in, she said.
Oscar walked in. Rose stood up immediately, unsure of how to act. I was just thinking, she said nervously. Oscar looked at her calmly. I know you're uncomfortable here, he said. Rose blinked slightly, surprised. He continued. You can leave if you want. For a moment, hope rose inside her. But then it faded just as quickly. I have nowhere to go, she said honestly. Oscar studied her face for a few seconds. Then he spoke clearly. As long as you're here, no one will harm you. His voice was calm, but firm. Rose felt something shift inside her. Those words, they felt real. Not like empty promises. Like something he would actually enforce. He added, You don't need to be afraid here. Rose nodded slowly. Thank you, she said quietly. The next few days passed differently. Rose noticed small changes. A doctor came to check on her. A very professional one. He asked careful questions, ran tests, and made sure she and the baby were okay. Rose was surprised. She hadn't asked for any of it. After the doctor left, she approached one of the staff. Who arranged that? She asked. The woman smiled slightly. Sir did. Rose's heart softened. Oscar had done it without telling her. Without expecting anything in return. For the first time in a long while, Rose felt safe. Not completely, but enough to breathe. Enough to rest. That night, she sat on her bed, her emotions building up. Everything she had been holding in,
the pain,
the rejection, the fear, it all came rushing out. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't deserve that, she whispered, her voice breaking. She tried to stay quiet, but the tears wouldn't stop. Her shoulders shook as she cried. For her lost home, for her father's rejection, for the life she didn't plan, and for the future she didn't understand. She didn't notice the door opening slightly. Oscar stood there, watching. He didn't interrupt.
He didn't speak.
He just saw her. Not the girl he picked up in the rain, but a broken young woman trying to survive. After a moment, Rose noticed him. She quickly wiped her tears, embarrassed. I'm sorry, she said softly. Oscar shook his head once. No need, he replied. For a brief moment, something changed in his expression. Not fully soft, but a less cold. Then he turned and left quietly. Rose sat there, confused but strangely comforted. But just when things started to feel calm, something happened. Later that night, as Rose walked down the hallway to get water, a shadow moved behind her. Before she could react, a hand reached out suddenly, but just as quickly, another hand grabbed the attacker. Hard. A sharp sound echoed. A guard stepped in, holding the man tightly. What are you doing? the guard snapped. The man struggled, but it was useless. Rose stood frozen, her heart pounding fast. Another guard appeared. We found him sneaking around, he said firmly. Within seconds, the man was dragged away.
Gone.
Like nothing had happened. Rose stood there, shaken, her breathing uneven. That was when it hit her. This place was safe, but it was also dangerous. And the man protecting her was powerful enough to stop threats before they ever reached her. The incident in the hallway stayed in Rose's mind. Even though the guards handled it quickly, she could not forget how close it felt. For the first time, she understood something clearly. Being in Oscar's world meant safety, but it also meant danger existed somewhere nearby. The next morning, the house felt different. There was more security, more movement. The guards looked sharper, more alert than usual. Rose noticed it immediately. "What's going on?" she asked one of the staff. The woman hesitated before answering. "There has been a small issue, ma'am." Rose frowned. "What kind of issue?" But the woman just gave a polite smile. "Everything is under control." That answer did not calm her. Later that day, Rose saw Oscar speaking with two men in suits near the entrance. His face was serious, his tone calm but firm. She could not hear everything, but she caught a few words. "Who sent him?" Silence. Then Oscar spoke again, his voice lower this time. "Find out." There was no anger in his voice. That was what made it more unsettling. Rose stepped back quietly before they noticed her. Her heart beat faster. Something was wrong. That evening, one of the guards approached Oscar while Rose was in the room. "Sir," the guard said respectfully, "we found the source." Oscar turned slightly. "And?" The guard hesitated for a moment. "It's connected to Mr. Karim." Rose saw the change immediately. Oscar didn't shout. He didn't react loudly, but his eyes hardened. "Bring him," he said calmly. Just 2 words. Simple, but heavy. Rose felt a chill run through her. She had never seen this side of him so clearly before. A few hours later, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. Rose sat in the living room, her hands resting on her stomach. Her mind was filled with questions, but she didn't know how to ask them. Then she heard footsteps. Oscar walked in. There was something different about him. His expression was the same, controlled, calm, but there was a weight behind it now. "What happened?" Rose asked softly. Oscar looked at her for a moment. "Someone made a mistake," he said. Rose's chest tightened. "The man from last night?" Oscar nodded once. "He won't be a problem again." The way he said it made Rose understand without needing details. Her fingers curled slightly. You handled it?" she asked carefully. Oscar stepped closer. "Yes." That was all. No explanation. No justification. Just truth. Rose looked at him differently now. This man had saved her, protected her, but he was also capable of things she could not fully understand. Dangerous things. For a moment, fear touched her heart, but it didn't stay, because at the same time, he had never made her feel unsafe. Not even once. "I see," she said quietly. There was a brief silence. Then Oscar spoke again. "No one will come near you again," he said. His voice was steady.
Certain.
Rose nodded slowly. "I believe you," she replied. And she meant it. That was the moment something changed between them. Not just protection. Not just kindness.
Trust.
Over the next few days, things settled again. The house returned to its normal rhythm. But Rose noticed small changes in Oscar. He spoke a little more when he was around her. Not much. Just small things. "Did you eat? Are you feeling okay? Did the doctor come?" Simple questions. But they mattered. And Rose noticed something else too. He was different with her.
Softer.
Not weak. Just careful. Like he was trying not to break something fragile. One afternoon, Rose sat in the garden behind the house. It was quiet and peaceful, a sharp contrast to everything else. Oscar walked out and stopped a few steps away. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Rose looked up at him.
"Thank you," she said.
Oscar frowned slightly. "For what?" "For everything," she replied. "For helping me. For protecting me." Oscar looked at her for a long moment. "You don't owe me anything," he said. Rose shook her head gently. I know, she said, but I still want to say it. Another silence passed between them, but this one felt different. Comfortable. Rose slowly placed her hand on her stomach. I was so scared before, she admitted quietly. I didn't think I would survive any of this. Oscar's gaze followed her hand. You will, he said. His voice was calm, but firm. You're stronger than you think. Rose gave a small, soft smile. For the first time in a long while, she felt it.
Hope.
Oscar stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. Then, slowly, he reached out. His hand hovered for a brief second, as if he was giving her a chance to stop him. But she didn't. Gently, carefully, he placed his hand on her stomach. The moment was quiet, simple, but powerful. And for the first time, it didn't feel like protection anymore. It felt like something deeper. The night Rose went into labor, everything changed. It started quietly. A sharp pain, then another. Rose sat up slowly on the bed, her hand gripping the sheets. Her breathing became uneven. Oscar, she called softly. Within seconds, the door opened. He was there, always alert. What is it? He asked, already stepping closer. Rose winced as another wave of pain hit her. I think it's time, she whispered. Oscar didn't panic, but his entire body became focused. Get the doctor. Now, he said firmly to the staff outside. Everything moved fast after that. The house, which was usually calm and controlled, became active. People moved quickly but quietly. The doctor arrived almost immediately, carrying equipment. Rose was helped into a more prepared room. The pain grew stronger. Each wave hit harder than the last. Rose held onto the bed tightly, her face filled with strain. Oscar, she called again, her voice shaking. I'm here, he replied. He didn't leave. Not for a second. He stood beside her, close enough for her to feel his presence. Not cold, not distant. Steady. Rose gripped his hand tightly as the pain intensified. I can't do this, she cried. Yes, you can, he said calmly. You're stronger than this. His voice didn't rise. It didn't rush, but it held her together. The doctor guided her gently. Breathe slowly, he instructed. You're doing well. Time lost meaning. Minutes felt like hours. Pain and effort filled every moment. Rose cried. She screamed. She pushed. And through it all, Oscar stayed. He didn't step away. He didn't look uncomfortable. He didn't show fear. He simply stood there, holding her hand, his eyes fixed on her. At some point, something inside him shifted. No one else noticed. But in that moment, he stopped seeing her as just someone he had helped. She became something more. Someone he needed to protect. No matter what. After one final, painful push, a cry filled the room.
Small. New.
Alive. Rose's body relaxed instantly. Tears filled her eyes as the sound reached her. My baby, she whispered. The doctor smiled. It's a healthy baby, he said. Relief spread through the room. Rose lay back, exhausted, her chest rising and falling slowly. Oscar stood still for a moment. Then his eyes moved to the child. For the first time, there was something in his expression that wasn't control. It was emotion. Quiet, but real. The baby was cleaned and gently placed in Rose's arms. She held the child carefully, her hands shaking slightly. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I did it, she whispered. Oscar stepped closer. He looked at the baby, then at her. And, in that silent moment, he made a decision. Not spoken, not explained, but final. They would never suffer again. Not her, not the child. From that day, things began to change. Rose recovered slowly. The first few days were quiet. She focused on the baby, learning, adjusting, healing. Oscar made sure everything she needed was always there. Doctors checked on her regularly. The baby had everything: care, comfort, protection. No mistakes. No risks. As time passed, Rose began to feel different. Stronger. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. She was no longer the girl who had been thrown out into the rain. She had survived something bigger. And now she had something to fight for. One afternoon, Rose walked into Oscar's study. He was sitting at his desk, reviewing documents. She hesitated at the door. "Can I come in?" she asked. Oscar looked up. "Yes." She stepped inside slowly. "I want to learn," she said. Oscar leaned back slightly. "Learn what?" "Everything," she replied. "Business, money, how things work." Oscar studied her for a moment. "Why?" he asked. Rose held his gaze. "Because I don't ever want to be helpless again." There was no fear in her voice this time. No hesitation. Just determination. Oscar nodded slowly. "All right," he said. From that day, things changed again. He began to teach her. Not everything at once, but step by step. She learned how money moved, how businesses grew, how power worked, how decisions were made. At first, it was difficult, but Rose didn't give up. She listened. She asked questions. She learned quickly. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. And with every passing moment, she became more confident, more aware, more in control. Then one day, Oscar stood up from his desk. "Come with me," he said. Rose followed him, without question. They walked into a large room. Several men were already seated around a table. Important men. Serious men. The conversation stopped the moment Oscar entered. Rose stepped in behind him. Her heart beat faster. But she didn't stop. Oscar took his seat. Then he looked at her. "Sit," he said. Rose hesitated for a second. Then she pulled a chair and sat beside him. The room fell silent. Eyes turned toward her. But she didn't look down. She didn't shrink. She sat there.
Calm. Steady.
Present. And in that moment, Rose was no longer just surviving. She had stepped into a new world. A world of power. A world of control. And she was no longer standing behind it. She was part of it. Years passed. Not slowly, not painfully like before. This time, they passed with purpose. Rose stood in front of a large mirror, adjusting the sleeve of her tailored outfit. The woman staring back at her was nothing like the girl who had once stood in the rain, shaking and alone. Her posture was straight. Her eyes were calm, confident, in control. She didn't rush anymore. She didn't doubt herself the way she used to. She had changed. Completely. Behind her, soft footsteps echoed across the polished floor. "Mama." Rose turned immediately, her expression softening. Her child ran toward her, smiling brightly. Clean, well-dressed, and full of life, everything Rose had once feared she couldn't provide. She bent slightly, opening her arms. "Good morning," she said warmly, pulling the child close. The small arms wrapped around her tightly. "I'm going with you today," the child said excitedly. Rose smiled. "Not today. You have lessons, remember?" A small sigh followed. "But I want to stay with you." Rose gently touched the child's face. "And I want you to grow strong," she said softly. "That's more important." The child nodded slowly. "Okay." Rose kissed the child's forehead, then stood up again. As the child was led away by a caregiver, Rose watched for a moment. Her heart felt full. Not heavy, not broken. Full. She had built this. This life. This safety. This peace. A voice behind her spoke. "You're ready." Rose turned. Oscar stood by the door.
Still calm.
Still composed. But now familiar. There was no fear when she looked at him anymore. Only understanding. "Yes," she replied. They walked out together. Outside, a sleek black car waited. But this time, Rose didn't feel small getting into it. She entered with confidence, like someone who belonged, because she did. The car drove through the city. Tall buildings, busy roads, expensive districts. Everything moved fast, but Rose remained steady. Over the years, she had learned, not just from watching, but from doing. At first, Oscar had guided her, taught her how money worked, how decisions shaped power, how people responded to strength. But now, Rose had built her own path, her own businesses, her own influence. People knew her name. And when they spoke it, it wasn't with pity. It was with respect. Sometimes even fear. "She's sharp," some would say. "She doesn't make mistakes," others would add. And they were right. Rose didn't make careless decisions anymore. She thought ahead. She moved carefully. She controlled her world. The car stopped in front of a large building. Glass walls. Security at the entrance. People moving in and out with purpose. Rose stepped out. The guards nodded respectfully. "Good morning, ma'am." She gave a small nod in return. Inside, a meeting was already waiting. Men in suits. Business partners. Investors. All seated. All serious. All watching. Rose walked in beside Oscar. But this time, she didn't follow him. She walked beside him as an equal. She took her seat, opened her file, and began.
Her voice was calm, clear,
Confident. She spoke about numbers,
growth.
expansion, strategy. And no one interrupted. No one questioned her authority, because she had earned it. After the meeting ended, people stood up, shaking hands, thanking her. "Impressive as always," one man said. Rose gave a polite smile. "Thank you." As she stepped out of the building later that afternoon, the sun was bright.
Warm.
Nothing like the rain from years ago. She paused for a moment, adjusting her bag. Then she saw him, across the street. A man standing near a small roadside stall. His clothes were worn, his posture slightly bent, his face older, tired. But she recognized him immediately. Her father. Rose froze. Her heart didn't race like before. It didn't break either. But something inside her shifted. He looked thinner, weaker. Nothing like the strong, proud man who had once stood in front of her and pointed at the door. He hadn't seen her yet. He was speaking to someone, his voice low, almost humble. Rose stood there, silent, watching, the past and present colliding in one moment. And for the first time in years, the man who had thrown her out into the rain was the one who looked lost. The car slowed down as it turned into the narrow street. Rose looked out the window quietly. Nothing had changed. The same small houses, the same cracked walls, the same dusty road. It was like time had stopped here, while her life had moved forward. "Are you sure?" Oscar asked beside her. His voice was calm, but there was a quiet concern in it. Rose nodded once. "Yes." The car stopped in front of the house. Her old home. The place where everything had fallen apart. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she took a deep breath and stepped out. Her heels touched the ground slowly. This time, she wasn't shaking. This time, she wasn't weak. She walked toward the door with steady steps. Each step carried years of pain and strength. She knocked. There was movement inside. Then the door opened. Her stepmother stood there. For a second, the woman didn't react. She just stared,
Confused.
Then her eyes widened. "Rose?" she said slowly, like she couldn't believe it. Rose stood calmly, dressed in clean, elegant clothes. Her posture straight, her face composed. She didn't look like the girl they had chased away. Not even close. "Good afternoon," Rose said politely. Her stepmother didn't respond immediately. Her eyes moved up and down, taking in everything. The clothes, the confidence, the difference. "Who is?" she started, but her voice trailed off. Before she could finish, a voice came from inside. "Who is at the door?" Rose's chest tightened slightly. She knew that voice. Her father stepped forward, and the moment he saw her, he froze. The air changed instantly. His face lost all color. "Rose," he said, almost like a whisper. Silence filled the space. No one moved. No one spoke. He looked at her carefully, trying to understand, trying to connect the girl he had thrown out with the woman standing in front of him now. He began but stopped. Rose held his gaze.
Calm.
Unshaken. "I came to see you," she said. Her voice was steady. No anger. No tears. Just control. Her stepmother stepped back slightly, still silent, still shocked. "Come in," her father said quickly, stepping aside. Rose walked into the house. Nothing had changed. The same furniture, the same smell, the same walls that had heard her cries that night. But she didn't feel small anymore. She didn't feel trapped. She stood in the middle of the room.
Strong.
Her father turned to face her fully now.
I didn't know where you went, he said.
His voice was softer. Different. I tried, he added, but his words felt uncertain. Rose listened quietly. She didn't interrupt. She didn't react. I was angry, he continued. I made a mistake. That word hung in the air. Mistake. Like everything that had happened could be reduced to that. Rose's eyes didn't change. I regret it, he said, his voice lower now. Every day. For a brief second, a memory flashed in her mind. The rain. The door slamming. The way he had turned away. Her chest tightened slightly. But she didn't let it take over. She had already survived that moment. She was no longer that girl. You regret it, Rose repeated calmly. Her father nodded quickly. Yes, I do. There was a pause. Then he stepped closer. You can come back, he said. This is still your home. Rose looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, she saw the difference. Not power, not pride, but weakness, regret, and something else.
Need.
But Rose didn't feel the same pull anymore. She didn't feel the need to belong there. She didn't need his approval. Not anymore. She took a slow breath. Then she spoke. You threw me away, she said.
Her voice was still calm.
Still controlled. But every word carried weight. Her father lowered his eyes. But I built myself. The room went silent. Her stepmother didn't speak. Her father didn't respond. Because there was nothing to say. Rose stood there for a moment longer. Not waiting. Not hoping. Just standing in her truth. Then she turned. And walked toward the door. Not rushed. Not emotional. Just done. And this time, when she stepped out, she wasn't being chased away. She was leaving on her own terms. The evening was quiet. Soft light filled the living room, and everything felt calm. Nothing like the chaos Rose once knew. She stood by the large window, looking out at the city below. Bright lights. Tall buildings. Movement everywhere. Years ago, she had stood in the rain with nothing. No home. No support. No direction. Now, everything was different. Behind her, soft laughter filled the room. Rose turned slightly. Her child was playing on the floor, smiling freely, safe and full of life. That sound alone made everything worth it. Rose walked over slowly and sat beside the child, watching carefully. Are you happy? She asked gently. The child looked up and nodded quickly. Yes. Rose smiled. That simple answer meant more to her than anything money could buy. It meant safety. It meant peace. It meant she had done something right. She reached out and brushed the child's hair back softly. I'm glad, she said. Footsteps approached from behind. Rose didn't need to turn to know who it was. Oscar. He stopped a few steps away, watching them quietly. You've been quiet, he said. Rose looked up at him, her expression soft. I was just thinking, she replied. About what? Rose paused for a moment. Everything, she said. Oscar stepped closer. Regret? He asked. Rose shook her head slowly.
No.
That answer came easily. Because it was true. She didn't regret her journey. Not even the painful parts. Yes, it hurt, she continued. Yes, I lost a lot. But if none of that happened, I wouldn't be here. She looked around the room. The peace. The safety. The life she had built. I wouldn't have this, she added quietly. Oscar watched her closely. There was something different in his eyes now. Not just protection. Not just responsibility. Something deeper. You built this, he said. Rose smiled slightly. Not alone, she replied. For a moment, silence settled between them. But it wasn't empty. It was comfortable.
Real.
Rose stood up slowly, her child holding onto her hand. Oscar stepped closer. Close enough now that there was no distance between them. You're not the same person I met that night, he said. Rose looked at him. No, she agreed. I was scared, broken, unsure of everything. She took a breath. But now, I know who I am. Oscar nodded once. And who is that? He asked. Rose's eyes didn't move from his. A woman who doesn't need to beg to be accepted, she said calmly. A woman who built her own life and protects what matters. Her child squeezed her hand gently. That was her answer. That was her strength. Oscar looked down at the child, then back at her. And for the first time, there was no distance left between them. No walls. No hesitation. Just understanding. And something real. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. Rose's chest softened. She wasn't used to hearing that. Not from where she came from.
But now,
It felt right. "Thank you," she replied. Outside, the city continued to move. Business deals. Decisions.
power.
Rose was now part of all of it. Her name carried weight. People respected her. Some feared her. She had built an empire. Not through luck. Not through pity. But through strength, learning, and resilience. And yet, what mattered most stood right beside her. Her child. Her peace. Her life. Rose looked out the window one last time. Then she turned away from the past completely. No anger. No regret. Just closure. Because she had already proven everything she needed to prove. And she didn't need anyone else to validate her. She had become something greater than the pain she came from. She had become something unbreakable. And as she stood there, calm and complete, one truth remained clear. The girl they called a disgrace became the woman no one could ignore.